Hi everyone. Run up to World Mental Health Day, and I said I'd do a series of videos, personal stories in the run up, because to me that's important. There was another one posted the other day relating to humour and mental health. Thank you to everybody who liked it, commented it, sent me messages about it. Really appreciate the feedback. To me that matters. You know, if you guys don't read it, don't see it, don't appreciate it, it's not having the impact that I want it to, because it's all about helping people, and that to me is what World Mental Health Day is all about. So today's the second video, and earlier in the week I promised no brands, and I'm gonna stick to that promise, except for 10 seconds, because I need to explain something that will make today's topic relevant. And frankly, the easiest way for me to do this is using CV Teach. So 10 seconds, that's all I'm going to do. Is I'm going to use this cushion just to kind of demonstrate the point, because I think it's a really important point. And the topic that I wanted to talk about today is loneliness, which I think is a really relevant subject right now with the pandemic. And also in the run up to the day on Saturday. I think it's a huge topic that often I think is misunderstood. So let me just explain what I mean, and then I'll put the cushion away and I'll never speak of it again. So the reason to do it is because I want to draw attention to this side of the wall, right? So causes, and anyone who kind of knows anything about this, so causes are things like experiences, situations that we sort of find ourselves in, and being alone, not having any friends, not having any family, or on the flip side, having loads of friends and having family and being surrounded by people is a cause, is a situation, it's an experience, it's a circumstance that we find ourselves in, and I find myself in. Loneliness and feeling lonely is down here in the emotion piece. And what you can see, and this is really the subject of today, is to see that being alone or not being alone, having friends, not having friends, is all up here. But the feeling of loneliness is down here at the emotion level. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in between the two. And so I think the thing that a lot of people misunderstand is that they assume that if you've got loads of friends and loads of family and are surrounded by people all the time, you shouldn't feel lonely. But actually the two are totally different. And that was all I wanted to use the pillow for, is just really to explain that concept. Because I think a lot of people sort of will look at others, look at themselves and go, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel lonely? I've got friends, I've got family, I've got a great job, whatever's going on for you in your life at the time. And often we don't understand, well, why do we feel lonely? And equally, there are people that are physically alone in the world that maybe don't feel lonely. So for me, I think it's really important to differentiate the fact that the two are different. Of course, they can be connected, but equally they cannot be. They don't have to be connected. And for me, and so this is where I kind of get onto the personal story, I've never been, I wouldn't say physically alone in my life. I've been very lucky. I've always had really supportive friends, family, and you know, I've never struggled in that regard. You know, I was always part of clubs growing up, and I played cricket a lot, so I had a lot of my teammates, university, you know, surrounded by friends. But I have felt lonely, and that's a reality. And sometimes people just go, oh well, the answer to not feeling lonely is then to kind of surround yourself by lots of people. And my view is, well, you could do, but that's not really addressing the core issue of loneliness, which is that it's an emotion and there's a bunch of beliefs and thoughts, driving that. and that can or cannot be related to the situation you find yourself in. So when's that happened to me? Well, back at the sort of worst elements of my kind of depression and breakdown. Yeah, ridiculously lonely, and that was a feeling that just wouldn't go away. And it didn't matter to me how many times people send me messages saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Can we come round? Can we have a chat?" Whether I said yes or no, and even if I said yes and spent an hour or 2 hours in their company, I didn't not feel lonely anymore. And it took me a while to realise that the two aren't entirely a sort of a seesaw, fix one, fix the other, whatever analogy you want to use. But it took me ages to realise that wasn't the case. Now, of course, there are things that we need to all do to be less lonely, and that's not the subject of this video. And there's maybe I'll do another video on that separately, but post World Mental Health Day. But for me, it's really important that we recognise that there are lots and lots of people out there, friends, family, colleagues, that may well be feeling incredibly lonely, and we're sort of looking at them going, well, why? Because I'm talking to you all the time. Why do you feel lonely? And it's again important to kind of differentiate the two. And equally, if you yourself find yourself in that situation, by all means, please use the method I have to explain it and to say, look, actually, the experience, the circumstance, the situation of having friends or not having friends is quite different to this emotion over here, this feeling of loneliness. And there's a lot that kind of happens in the middle, which people don't see. People aren't aware of kind of the beliefs that sit in your head, my head, your head, the thoughts that are going around all the time. And so it's perfectly possible to be fully surrounded by people all the time and still feel lonely. And I worry sometimes that we are trying to simplify it to the point where we're saying, well, the way to combat loneliness is by connecting lots of people together. I think people will honestly say that they felt lonely, they jumped on a call with their friend, they might have had a really cool chat. They may feel better, absolutely, after that, but that feeling of loneliness won't have suddenly just disappeared. If you feel all alone in the world, that doesn't just evaporate off the back of one phone call or a single "are you okay?" That's not to say we shouldn't be asking people how they are and are they okay. But I think we have to recognise that there's a lot more that sits behind people feeling alone. And actually, that feeling of loneliness plays to one of our most basic fears, which is ultimately a fear of abandonment, fear of separation, fear of isolation. And because we're so scared of that all the time, we can sometimes start to then feel dread, and that's why kind of feeling lonely is such a negative thing, because it plays on that intrinsic fear that, oh my God, I've been abandoned, or I'm going to be abandoned. And so it's hardly a surprise that loneliness is becoming such a big issue. And so what I would say to people is, absolutely still reach out. But if you're the friend providing a bit of support, don't expect that it just happens once. You reach out to somebody and then they say, look, I've been feeling really lonely, so I wanted to talk to you. And you go, yeah, that's cool, let's talk. And you do have a really good conversation. But when you walk away from that call as the friend, don't assume that that's the end of it. That person is now no longer feeling lonely, because those feelings will take time to go away. There's a lot of beliefs and thoughts that go with it, and it takes time for those beliefs and thoughts to settle and for those beliefs to change over time, and eventually, hopefully, and it did happen in my case, those feelings of loneliness do go away. Anecdotally, little story from that period in my life. I did the classic thing, pushed everybody away, particularly those close to me, friends, family. Nope, not talking to any of you. You're scared of judgment. You're scared of people, laughing at you, I suppose. And so you think, well, I'm not going to talk to anyone that I know about what's going on. But at some point in that journey, I kind of recognised that I needed a friend, someone to talk to, a group of friends. And so, you kind of look around. There's little meet-up groups, there's community events, there's things at the local community centre. Surprisingly, there are groups that you can kind of join up with. And there was a group of professionals that kind of used to meet in a pub every now and again. And so I emailed the person organising it and I said, look, I'd like to kind of come along. And they said, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. But this was a group of strangers. And so the emotional energy that I went through and anxiety at going to meet them for the first time was off the scale, And I remember sort of at least going to that pub 3 times before I plucked up the courage to walk through the door and go and say hi to them. So I'd kind of get there, I'd sort of look through the window, I'd kind of see them, I'd go, oh, that looks very intimidating, and I'd run away. And I'm reasonably okay. I'll stand in front of a stage and talk to people, and I'll get in a room and I'll talk to people, but anxiety and extroversion, introversion, how bubbly someone is, there's no bearing whatsoever. You can be an absolute motor mouth and still suffer from anxiety. I can tell you that. But anxiety's not a major issue for me, but it was at that point. And it took a huge amount of energy to kind of go and make those friends. But actually what I was doing was kind of running away from the friends and family I already had. And when I could have used that energy to pluck up the courage to talk to the people closest to me, I wouldn't say wasting energy, but certainly using energy that I didn't have on things that maybe didn't help me as much. But a lot of that was linked back to my feelings of loneliness and my kind of thinking that actually the way to deal with this is to surround myself with people. Did it work? No, absolutely not. It obviously made me feel better from time to time, but those feelings didn't go away for many years. And I guess, and I don't know, this isn't a kind of therapy session for myself, but maybe those feelings will always be around somewhere in the background. Maybe that's an intrinsic part of me. I'm okay, I've learned to deal with things, but I know many people out there haven't, and those feelings of loneliness, particularly now in the pandemic, are huge. And I think it's really important for people to recognise that the journey away from feeling lonely is a lot more complicated than simply just connecting with people or sending a couple of messages or signing up for an app that kind of says, let's connect this person to this person, everyone can have a chat. And social media, I think, is a huge part to play in this, because social media connects us to all sorts of people all over the world, but I don't think it makes us feel any less lonely if loneliness is kind of there. So I think that's something to bear in mind. Anyway, these videos were not supposed to be long, so 15 minutes or less, so I'm kind of coming up to that point. But I think, if coming up to World Mental Health Day, please do reach out to people, but don't do it once. Be there for them, be there in its entirety, help them through that period of loneliness. If you're going through something similar, look after yourself, recognise that it's a journey, and do everything you can to get yourself to a better place. And absolutely, if it starts to get on top of you, reach out to a professional. So that's it from me. Look after yourselves, take care, And I will speak to you probably once or twice more before World Mental Health Day. But stay safe, stay well, and take care.